Glenn, thank you so much, brother, for joining us on the podcast. It's a pleasure having you here.
Thanks, Dave. Looking forward to it.
Absolutely. Now, let's start with, how was your morning?
Morning was beautiful. A nice sleep in a big hotel bed. And we got up, had a nice breakfast, and made our way here to your beautiful studio.
And are you a eggs Benny type of guy, or you?
No. I've got my disclaimer is we're vegan, so no eggs, no animal product. It's all plant based. But yeah, just a bit of toast this morning and some coffee, and that was it.
Perfect way to start.
Yeah.
And we're going to get into some stuff very shortly. We'll just start with name, mob, and sort of where you're from.
Yeah. So full name, Glenn Johnston. The mob is Barramatta of the Dharug Nation, and Barramatta is our traditional name for Parramatta. So we decided quite a few years ago now to introduce our traditional name. And I'm able to trace 6 generations of our Aboriginal heritage back. So around the Auburn, Parramatta area. Can't go beyond the 6th generation because records just do not exist.
That's right.
And as part of my discovery is that there was a wealthy landowner by the name of Mitchell out there in the Auburn area, and he took it upon himself to take advantage of some of the Aboriginal girls, and there's offspring as a consequence of that. But of course, you're talking the 1830s to 1850s, that was not something they wanted to be known, and so there was no records around that. So quite often the offspring got the name of Mitchell. So Mitchell was our heritage, and then it's moved over to Johnston over the last couple of generations.
Wow. I found that mid-80s before the mid-1800s, the records. Or there's just a first name, no last name.
Yeah.
And I can't go any further.
Yeah. It's so prevalent. There's so many stories around of that, and it's that shared story. And then as Dad was the Aboriginal fellow there in Parramatta at the time, which was in the 1950s, it was considered the redneck area of Australia, the most racist, the most vilified sort of area. And Dad being dark-skinned and dark curly haired, he identified as Spanish. And I didn't really understand why that was until I got a bit older, and it was around self-preservation.
Wow.
In the 50s and 60s in Australia, you would not identify as Aboriginal. And it's sometimes difficult for the younger generation to understand that today because they never experienced that. But I can understand that the self-preservation mentality of non-disclosure, non-identification.
Yeah.
And it just made sense for them to do that back then. And what that did was built a mental wall of defence for Dad. So he would never talk about his upbringing, his culture, his connections, until later in life. I could talk to him a little bit about it, but it was only when he was charged up with a bit of alcohol, which used to be a concern because he was alcoholic. So the only way to learn and to hear some of his connections was through alcohol, which is a bit disturbing. But on the other hand, if I didn't have that, I would lose that connection at just one generation back. So I was determined to try to find out as much as I could, but still there's massive gaps and holes there. There's not a unfortunate line of continuity there I can trace. But like I say, I'm still on that journey, as many mob are. And it's amazing how about 12 months ago I was at a university function, and which is down near La Perouse in Sydney, and some of the the oldies were talking to me, and they said, "Oh, Johnston from Auburn," and I said, "Oh yeah, around that area." They go, "Oh, do you know so and so?" And they were giving me names of people that had moved from that area down there, which are relations.
Cool.
So it's just it just goes on and on. It's a great thing when you can try to discover that, but it's hard. As people get older, unfortunately, people die off, and their stories and connections go with them.
Yeah, we're going to keep going with that. Now, going back to those times where you were questioning Dad about the identity, let's talk about those first 10, 15 years of your life, maybe any core memories you have of growing up and that identity.
It didn't strike me until later in life, but we moved more than 30 times in my early years, and so Dad was you would coin the phrase restless, like he just didn't want to settle down. And as a kid, you don't know any different. You think, oh, we don't unpack boxes, we just moved to a different house. And it wasn't until later in life that, again, I discovered things like, Dad wasn't registered to vote. So he hated the system that much. He didn't want to be connected to that. And so I think it's part of his mentality was just to keep on moving, so they couldn't pin him down. So we moved all over Sydney, which was obviously disruptive. But again, as a kid, you really don't know. You just sort of go with the flow. It's mum and dad. It's you just follow them. You don't know any different. So I had a fairly stable schooling because we were always around the metropolitan area of Sydney, and so that was, I guess, one stability I had. So primary school. And then into high school. So that was disruptive in later life. When I look back on it, I realised that was not normal for whatever normal is, but that certainly didn't appear unusual at the time.
Mm. And was there an age maybe in your teenage years where some of those things, again, you said later life came up, but as a teenager with identity and maybe when you left school, what are some of the things that eventually got you into leadership positions? How did that come about?
Oh. So I mentioned high school, and again at the time I didn't understand, but Dad didn't have much of an education as a young Aboriginal person. In fact, I never really found out the year that he left, but it would have been in his early teenage years. But he was determined to make sure that I had a good education. He understood the importance of that, but not having experienced it himself. And so he created a contract cleaning business, and he picked up some contracts at some of the big private schools in Sydney. And again, I didn't know any different, but what happened was he was able to get me a scholarship at Scots College, which is one of the top-tier schools. And so I went there. He obviously couldn't afford the full fees, hence the scholarship. So the school sergeant at the time and the bursar, or the finance director, obviously looked kindly upon Dad and myself, and I was gifted that opportunity of having that private college education.
Wow. For
the first 4 years, so up to year 10. At that time, so I'm 15, 16, Mum and Dad, because Dad was the bloody, the nomad, he couldn't hold down a permanent place, they ended up going up to Byron Bay. And Dad was a cellarman, so he used to work in pubs, in the cellars, tapping the kegs for the beer. Anyway, so he got the job up there in Byron Bay, and there was the expectation that I would follow them once I finished year 10. The German side, so my mother is German, her parents were, or certainly her father was highly educated over in Germany, so an engineer by profession, obviously interrupted by the Second World War, but he assumed that role once they migrated to Australia in 1956. He said, "You've got to finish high school." And again, I didn't know any different. I wasn't very academic in that sense. I liked the school environment of the just mucking around with mates and sport. and then you had to go to class, obviously, but the class was just there. But he was determined to say, to get me to finish the final 2 years. They were living out at Northmead, which is just near Parramatta. Scott's College is in Bellevue Hill, and so I was travelling 2 hours each way to go to college. Then doing sport after school, and it just became pretty hard. I was happy to take the easy way out, and I said, "Oh no, I'm going to follow Mum and Dad up to Byron when I finish." Anyway, they said, "No, come and live with us, and we'll just put you into a local high school to obviously take that 4 or 5 hours of travel away." And so then I went to Northmead High for the final 2 years. And then I thankfully never made that trip to follow Mum and Dad. I started out on my journey, essentially as a 16-year-old living with my grandparents. And then so I was doing that for the final couple of years. Got a job in year 12 opening up the local newsagent for the owner. So here I am getting up at 4 o'clock in the morning, opening up the shop, sitting behind the counter, serving the 3 customers that came in on their way to work, with cigarettes and a paper or whatever. The owner would come in at 6 or 6:30. I'd sort of bid him a good day, and I'd go home, get ready for school. And I went down to the local high school, which was about a couple 100-metre walk. And so that was my very early days. And I guess that kind of led to my focus on leadership, on being self-reliant, having to look after myself, getting a bit of a taste for money. Back then it was cash in hand. So it was, back in the day I was getting a couple $100 a week, cash in hand. It was great. I was cashed up.
Yeah.
Got a nice second-hand, or a terrible second-hand car, but a car nonetheless that allowed me to have that freedom and mobility. And then went from that into the corporate world, because after finishing year 12, I just didn't want to go to uni. I had the taste for money, had that freedom, flexibility. So I was determined to find a job and did that in a company called John Fairfax and Sons as an office junior. So really starting on the lowest peg. Not knowing what I wanted to do other than just get a job, which I did. And it sort of rolled from there.
And if I were to say a few words, procurement, Indigenous procurement.
Yeah.
Let's talk about that, and leadership, empowerment. It's within you, and it's become a part of you. But where did the mindset come for you to be such a driving force behind that?
Yes, as I mentioned, I got that office junior role, and didn't know what a big corporate was, but worked there for a couple of months, and then the office manager said, "Our purchasing officer is going on long service leave. Can you cover his role?" And I didn't even know what purchasing was, literally the word. And I said, "What is that?" And he goes, "Oh, you just buy pens and pencils." And I thought, I could probably do that. Anyway, so I took that role over as a purchasing officer, and then I just progressed through different career progression and got bigger roles. But it was probably 5 or 6 years after I started, I realised how powerful it was to give organisations or give companies, suppliers, purchase orders. I was very much before that just transactional. I need this, here's the purchase order, they give the goods and services. So I was very much in that transactional mode, but it wasn't until I sort of stepped out of that and realised just what that does. And then just through various circles and networks, Indigenous entrepreneurs who were trying to start up businesses understood that I was Indigenous, so there was that connection. And they were asking me to help them. How do they grow their business? So I was starting very early on with these organisations coming to me, or suppliers coming to me, wanting guidance and advice. So I was doing that. And that was the real watershed moment when I was seeing these organisations expanding on the back of purchase orders and contracts. And then a handful of years later, I met up with Michael McLeod, who was the other founder of Supply Nation. And as we were yarning about what he was trying to establish in Australia as developing the Indigenous economy, I said, I'm actually doing this on my own. And I've been doing it for a number of years. And I said, I can see what you're trying to do, and that's on scale and nationally. So I said, I want to be part of that as well. I think I've got some learned skills. And also, I couldn't identify any other blackfellas that were in the similar situation to me of being a purchasing manager or a procurement manager. So I was able to use my corporate experience and bring that into the Indigenous economy as an advisor on how best to navigate what essentially is the Western world, the commerce world. And so, pairing up with Supply Nation, it made sense. I was very supportive of what they were doing. And then the Indigenous procurement policy was formed in the Commonwealth government, and that really was the catalyst about 15 years ago for the commencement of the real black economy that we call it today.
So a lot of businesses and black leadership, you've paved the way for that through what you organically were doing, and then sort of formalized it, and now it's a huge part of our growth across all sectors.
Yeah, it is huge when you look at it as a single number. There's tens of billions of dollars coming into the black economy, but that really is a drop in the ocean. So whilst we like to look back and think, geez, we've come a long way and we've created something great, when I'm really critical of it, we haven't. The dollars spent are way less than 1% of the Australian economy. We represent 3% of the economy, so we're not there yet. And if this has taken 15 or 20 years to get to 1%, I'm hoping it's not going to take the equivalent time to get to 3%. We are on a absolute exponential growth. There's no doubt about that. But there's still a lot of work to do to get that to to equity. So what is representative of our 3% of population into 3% of the economy.
Yeah. And how important is it to you spiritually as a First Nations man to empower mob and to have them in positions of leadership and empowerment? Is there something that may have happened in, as a young man, there's just a moment where you're like, no, I'm changing this,
I don't think I had an aha moment. I didn't wake up one morning and go, this is it. I think it sort of almost crept up on me just through the experience I had. But when I look back now, I can just realise of just how solid and how important that is, of not relying on social welfare. For all too long, that's been the mantra of different governments over time, is just throw money at the problem, throw money at the blackfellas, that'll fix the problem. And we know that doesn't work. You've got to take ownership over that. And I think I've just sort of progressed along the path of realising social welfare, not good, self-determination and wealth creation is the opportunity. But I also acknowledge that not every blackfellow wants to be a business owner. And it's bloody hard being a business owner. There's no doubt about that. And I've got that lived experience as well. So for almost 25 years, I ran a security company on a part-time basis while I was building my corporate career, hiring out guards to hotels and clubs and bodyguards. So I know how hard it is. But I also know that the alternative is to find career pathways for people, so to help them do that. So that's another area that I'm involved in as well, creating solid employment pathways.
Yeah. If I were to say a little phrase to you, walking both worlds, what does that mean to you?
Yeah, Yeah, it's a phrase I use and I teach as well. So walking in two worlds is a constant, and it's there is an academic research paper on that, which I use as the foundation now, done by whitefellow researchers, but they have proven that there is a reality to these two worlds, and it's only something that's come about in the last 8 to 10 years that's often the foundation for a lot of the tension and a lot of the unknown realisation of blackfellas, like why are we different? What's doing this? And it's that inherent culture strength that we have. So that's our world, and then there's the Western modern world. Yes. And so there's often tension there, and that's what we say, the walking into worlds framework is you've got to be aware of the two worlds and how do you navigate successfully through both of them. So don't downplay your culture, because that is a real strength.
Yes.
But also understand that we're in a modern Western world that if you want to be part of, you've got to be part of. You can't sort of just jump in and jump out. It's there as constant.
Yes.
The best example of that is employment practices. So in the public service, for instance, there's a very structured way of employing people. You fill in an application form. If you pass that process, you then go to a panel interview. There's often 4 or 5 behaviour type questions that are asked, and you're assessed on that. There's a living example of how bad that is. A lot of blackfellas don't respond well to those interviews. So they're seen as not worthy, so they don't get the jobs. When I was at Transport for New South Wales a few years ago, there was a very switched-on executive director who was approached, and we said, you're culling a lot of these blackfellas based on these interview processes. Why don't we try and change that and have the executive director talk to these people? And we say, yarn, just have a one-on-one conversation with these people. Find out what they've done over the last 10 years, not look at the structured questions. And it was quite often centred around, for instance, you can't drive a train if you've got a criminal record. Well, there's a lot of blackfellas that have criminal records that are often petty, but they unfortunately carry those for most of their life. Yes. And they may have done nothing wrong or illegal in 10, 15 years and been a real contributor to their community and their family, but because they've got this legacy hanging around, they get discarded at the first hurdle. So we challenged the system. The executive director for HR was having these yarns, and she was realising that an 18, 19-year-old who gets a bit of a criminal record for fairly petty crimes, not paying fines and so on, driving unlicensed or whatever, she realised that wasn't character building for them. Beyond that, they've actually stellar community people. And so she was getting them across the line of this hurdle, and they were becoming train drivers. And that created the ripple effect through community were then hearing about transport and going, actually, they're not that bad. Uncle's now got a job driving trains. I might try that. So we increased the representation of Aboriginal people in transport over a couple of years. It was a great example of how you can challenge the concept of the two worlds. How do you find the middle ground for success?
Mm. And you sit on a number of boards. Yep. You've probably been in more important meetings and board meetings than you can count. What are some of the hurdles, obstacles that maybe mob create for themselves, but in that political sense, in that room, in those discussions, some of the things that they're not seeing the cultural side of that? What are you having to navigate there, and some of the challenges? Yeah,
I mean, that's a multi-layered question and scenario. I think it comes down to confidence and presence. I'm one to be courteous, and I'll knock on doors politely to try to get a response, and after a while then I will kick the door in if I have to. But that's built on the back of many years of confidence building. I think for young mob coming into that scenario, you've got to understand what our strength of community is, or culture, and that's centred around community and family, and build on the back of that. That's one of our real strengths, is that most of what we do is for others. The representation on boards is a little bit different because you're managing an organisation or leading an organisation through an executive. So it's different to being an executive at the front line managing or leading an organisation. So you've got to understand when you can lean into the executive and when you've got to be able to lean out and let the executives run their programs there. But really bringing the strength of our culture through, because it's been downplayed for so many generations that we weren't valuable, we weren't worthy of having those places. It's about changing that discourse, that negative discourse, and showing that we are capable when given those opportunities. But my reason for being on boards now is because, again, a handful of years ago, I realised apart from Indigenous organisations, there's not many representatives of mob on non-Indigenous boards. And if I look at the ASX 300, there's approximately 1,800 board seats there, on average 9 seats per organisation. There's 4 seats that are taken by mob. So that's 4 out of 1,800. I don't know about you, David, but the maths is pretty low on that as a representation.
Yeah.
And so part of my newfound purpose is to create opportunities to get more blackfellas on those tables, because that's where some of the big decisions are made through corporate Australia. And whilst governments can do a lot, and they're often the leaders on initiatives, it's the corporate world that then take that to the next level because it's far bigger economy.
And in your large career span so far, what are some of the highlights, whether it be something in the community or something you've got across the line that you had to fight really hard for?
Yeah, it's the creation of Aboriginal procurement policy. So in New South Wales government, I helped set that up. And so whilst we had the Commonwealth government, the IPP, about 5 or 6 years as a preceding policy, that was great for what it was, and that really was the first phase or first wave of the black economy. But yeah, getting the New South Wales state APP established and up and running was huge, because New South Wales is like a third of the Australian economy. So what New South Wales does can really affect the overall economy. So that was massive. And so then New South Wales launched their APP, and then pretty much every other state and territory followed as well. So I saw that as the next stage or next wave of boosting the Indigenous economy.
Wow. And some of the challenges, doesn't have to be with the work. It could be, let's just say, later in life you were talking about identity and mob and tracing lineage, and did any of that stuff bleed into some of the work you were doing? Was there an emotional toll at one stage that might have, changed the way you saw things?
I think as I get older, I get more appreciation of what our ancestors went through, and obviously I didn't have a connection much beyond Dad, but I can see through my story and the other stories that I hear through my journey of just how devastating the policies of the governments at the time were.
Yeah.
And I think when we hear about the White Australia policy, most people think that was like a flash in the pan. It was just around for a few years, and it was over 70 years. So there's 3 or 4 generations that had effect. And of course, we're still living with intergenerational trauma, and that's scientifically been proven that is a real thing. It's not a made-up concept. So as I get older, I realise that there was a lot of damage done, and I guess I'm at the position now where I can help change some of those outcomes. But also another reflection point is that the colonists' playbook. I've had experience of that in Maori culture. They experience the same sort of thing, and then even further over into North America with the Native Americans. Have had a bit to do with some of the tribes there, and they had exactly the same. You can change the names and the places, but the outcomes are the same.
Yeah. Outside of all this work, what does Glenn like to do for fun? Downtime, relaxation?
Yeah, it's a great question. We're fortunate that the wife and I have two beautiful adult daughters now. And one of those daughters has gifted us with 3 beautiful granddaughters. So they're 4, 2, and less than 1 year old. So, we love spending time with them. It's a real shift from parenthood to grandparenthood. We say we love our children dearly, but geez, we love our grandchildren more. It's a different world because I think as a parent you're just enmeshed 24/7 in the chaos, the noise, the ambiguity, the confusion, and the mess. Whereas as grandparents, I call us FIFO, fly in, fly out, and it's a beautiful concept where you can just love them dearly for a period of time and then hand them back. But in that period you're not caught up in the noise. There's a lot more clarity, and I think Karen, my wife, and I have shared that, where you see characteristics of our daughters in our granddaughters, but it's embellished because you're able to focus in on that because you're not confounded by all of the other noise and movement that's going on. So it's much more, much more almost microscopic. You get that that look into their characteristic. Yeah, it's great.
I've never heard someone say that, but it makes so much sense. When you're a parent, you just, you have hair, you're pulling it out, and there's work commitments and lack of sleep. But, and what's the best part about, your journey with culture and now as the girls grow, being able to yarn them that story? Yeah, and that is really something we treasure. A few weeks ago, we had the NAIDOC event. So they live on the Central Coast. So it's about an hour's drive from where we are. So we went up to the Central Coast and had an NAIDOC event with them, and just to have them there, sitting on our laps, with the smoking ceremony and watching the dances, and really they're at that age now, or certainly the 4-year-old is now looking at the young kids dancing and thinking, she could do that, and I want to do that. And so we're encouraging her mother to do that, but not forcing it either. We want it to be owned by them and let them progress into it. And I think that's a real beautiful sort of opportunity to talk about our culture. I remember a couple of years ago we had our oldest granddaughter with us, and Karen was changing nappies on our bed, and I got the clapsticks and started clapping, and the granddaughter just went, whoa, and really focused on that. And sometimes changing nappies on babies can be a bit hard. They're moving around. And she just chilled right out. And so Karen said, keep on doing it. And then gave her the clapsticks, and she was clapping away. Didn't know she was getting dressed and nappy changed and everything. It was a real beautiful moment. And so we've introduced that, and we continue that now with the second one when she stays with us. And so that's a nice introduction to part of our culture as well. Such a beautiful sound.
Oh, yeah.
Just resonates. Something resonates.
It goes through you.
Yeah.
It yes, of course you hear it, but you feel it.
Yeah.
And the didge is a great example of that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Now, the next few years, I'm guessing your vision, your ambition, not ambition, the wrong word, your mission, rather, it's evolving, It's always about empowerment and leadership.
Yeah.
So what's the next 3 to 5 years look like in terms of providing value to people like myself, who's a blackfellow business owner, who kind of, to be honest, when I was reading about you, I was like, holy shit, like this guy's, I'm talking to a professor right now. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Can we talk about the professor and then the next 3 to 5 years?
Yeah, sure. So the professorship came through the Uni of New South Wales, so the Australian Graduate School of Management, AGSM, which is one of the top business schools in Southeast Asia. I think we're ranked about 13th or 14th globally as a business school, so that's pretty powerful.
Yeah.
And so I did a program through them about 8 or 9 years ago as an Aboriginal leadership program, and I liked it so much, and they obviously liked me so much, they said, we want you to be part of our faculty, help us create these programs and deliver them going forward. And I said, oh yeah, I've never done that, so I'm happy to try something new, and I could see the opportunity to share my learning with Mob coming through. And so that evolved. Been doing that program with them. So MBA programs, executive leadership programs, short courses for a few years now. And then got appointed as a adjunct professor about a year and a half ago, which was interesting because, as I said earlier, I wasn't really academic at school. So it's not ironic, but it just shows, I guess, how people mature over time. And now I'm an advocate for lifelong learning. And so I think if giving me that title shows as a role model to someone that he's Glenn, who I didn't drop out of school, but I didn't finish it with great honours, but I finished it. But I've progressed, and if someone can see that sort of journey, they may aspire to that. So that's a nice role model to have. So I'll continue doing that, and that's expanding now. We're getting more mob coming through who want the training, which is music to my ears. I want that bigger audience because there's a gaping hole in our talent pipeline. So we've got to build that talent and that pipeline so that they're able to step up to some of these big roles when the opportunity presents, or create the opportunity as well. So that'll go on, that'll continue. The other area is, still focusing on the black economy because, self-determination is at the heart of everything I do. And having wealth gives you choices on life. It's not just about, the colour of the new Audi you may buy, but it helps people build things that are important, like houses to live in, different health choices, because they're things that are lagging. So, we talk about closing the gap. I'm sick and tired of the talk around that. It's been going on for nearly 20 years now, and we're not closing some of the important gaps. But I believe truly that if we create our own economy and our own self-determination, some of those other gaps will close over time. Hopefully not over a long period of time. We can shorten that, but that's really for the next handful of years. Talked about the importance of board work. Again, a lot of mob are sort of emerging, coming into the corporate world, don't understand the structures. They just think they've got to get a job. Yeah. Yes, they do, but what's sitting over that and the structures around that? And it's about challenging those age-old sort of structures by getting a voice at the table. And until we're well represented at those tables, our voice is not being truly heard. So that's part of that mission. Yeah.
Lifelong learning. Love that.
Yeah.
Is there anyone that you listen to, absorb, podcast? Or I love podcasts, clearly. That's why sort of one evolved.
Yeah.
Is there anyone that you sort of just listen to, whether it could be a podcast about fishing, someone that you sort of like, hey, I like what this person's about. I like their messaging. Yeah,
there's probably not one that I would put a finger on. You asked before about how do I get downtime and relax. Obviously, spending time with grandkids is part of that, but the other side is about the mental relaxation. So we've recently discovered yoga as part of that self-care. But what I've realised also throughout my life is a reliance on comedy or humour. And so any sort of podcasts, particularly movies that have a humorous slant to it, I tend to navigate to. But in my teachings at uni, I talk to mob about the importance of humour. We categorise ourselves as being funny, but we don't know why. And I say that it's part of our healing. We use humour as healing. And when I talk about that, a lot of them go, "Oh, you're right. It's very self-deprecating kind of humour." But that's at the centre. You get mob together and you hear laughter. It's almost goes without saying.
You hear it from a while away, don't you?
You do, right?
You hear mob.
Yeah, there's that mucking around, that laughter. And I've come to that realisation that I think it's part of our healing, is that we use that as medication.
Yeah.
And it's great medication to use.
Yeah.
It's free, doesn't harm you.
That's right.
It's readily available.
Yeah.
So I tell people to look at lighter side of life. Yeah, there's some serious shit going on. Yeah. Right? We get that, and people need to work through that at their own pace and their own resources where they need to. But have that levity, that comedy relief there as a backstop. Yeah.
I love that, because in the little creative space, usually when there's a dramatic scene, you make people laugh before, breaks them down, opens them up to then have nice, meaningful conversations about something else. You're breaking the ice, you're healing, you're sharing stories. And I like medicine. I'm gonna use that now, if that's okay.
Please do.
That's a really good one. And can you share a little bit of insight onto your trip here in Mianjin and in Brisbane?
Yeah.
And what you've come down for, and some news there?
Yeah, sure. So there's a global peak body for procurement and supply chain professionals. Sounds a bit naff, but it's called CIPS, so Chartered Institute of Procurement and Supply, a UK-centred or founded organisation. It's one of the oldest professional bodies in the world, which is nice. It's over 90 years old. And they, if you like, have representation across government and industry for the professionalism of procurement. And in Australia, there's about 7,000 or 8,000 members of that organisation. And each year we get together, have a conference, and then a gala awards ceremony. And I was fortunate enough for my day job procurement team to be nominated as the procurement team of the year. So we got the finalists, and in my humble ways, I never think those things eventuate, and you end up as a winner. But we were fortunate enough last night to get the gong for the best or procurement team of the year. Large organisation is the official title. And that was nice. I had a couple of the team with me up on stage. So as a leader, it's nice to get that acknowledgement. But I'm not a leader without the teams working around me. And so it was nice to have them on stage as well to receive some of that accolade.
Congratulations.
Yeah, thank you.
You earned that breakfast and that sleep in.
Yes. Yeah.
And leadership. There's so many different ways to lead. What does leadership mean to you?
Yeah, if you talk about my learnings of recent, there's a podcast and a book by an Australian fella. It's called No Bullshit Leadership. And so I've been getting into that lately, and that's a bit of a revelation. The most important thing for a leader is to create value. And I'll just let those words resonate with you. Leaders often don't think about that. But then what does value mean? So, of course, in the the shareholder world, it's about creating value for shareholders, right? Yeah, if that's your area. But there's also customers, there's employees, there's other various stakeholders. Even at community level, there's stakeholders involved, and it's about creating value. So as a leader, if you're not creating value, then you're not doing leadership. And other elements of leadership are cutting through, as his name, David Martin says, is about cutting through the bullshit. It's about getting rid of ambiguity or managing change and ambiguity, because that's ever present. And if that's in the way of your teams, they will focus on that and not do the job they're supposed to do, that they're accountable for. And so that's part of leadership, is to break down that ambiguity, so the teams don't get caught up in that noise, and manage change, communicate that with teams, be supportive of teams, but understand that as a leader, you're responsible for the outcome of the teams. The teams are accountable. Quite often, leaders step in and go, I can do that. And so they take over that role of that person because the person's not delivering. They need to force that back onto the person, that person is accountable for their output, and allow them to do that. So leadership is complicated. It's one of the hardest roles to do, and there's not many people that do it well. I stumble and fall every now and then as well, and so I have to self-check. But that's part of learning and growth.
I've got some off questions.
Yeah.
Random questions. What's the music you like listening to? I'm just curious.
Oh yeah, man, it's a real eclectic. I guess popular Australian bands like In Excess, Midnight Oil really resonate. When I look at my Spotify list over the years, each year we get that annual playlist. Yeah. Rolling Stones comes out as often my most played band. So that sort of genre, I guess 80s, 90s rock music.
Yeah. I guess, music and content we consume and films and stuff, has a big, role in those formative years. And 41, so I remember that music. I remember hearing it, the aunties playing it. And very determined, strong music. And films, any particular film? This is a hard question, like top your films, but
yeah.
I'm just genuinely curious because I love to sort of get a sense of impactful films that may have changed people's perception or opened them up to a new way of thinking.
Yeah. I have two standouts, and Karen always goes, oh, not again, when they get played. And it's really more about the actor. So Tom Hanks is probably my favourite actor.
Yes.
Jack Black, from a comedy point of view, is my second favourite. But Tom Hanks movies, so you've got The Green Mile and Forrest Gump would be my two standouts. They are on loop play. Whenever they're on at home on free to air, they get front and centre.
Absolutely love those films.
Yeah.
Shawshank Redemption is another one of my favourites. I'm glad you said Green Mile, because that's a very powerful film.
It really is. It's about the black fella there is because of his colour and because he's not literate enough, he gets accused and charged of a horrendous murder. Rape and murder of the girls. That's really powerful. And also the non-natural, that he's got that spirit in him, which is the moths, he transfers that and he gives that for good, but also for bad, to the governor's wife. She has brain cancer. So he fixes her, and then he makes one of the prison guards, turns him insane.
Yeah.
So that's incredibly powerful. Yeah.
And it was magical.
Yeah.
We were watching it as a child, and beautiful cinematography, the acting, but then there was that magical element to it. And this is just for a random day, but there's an incredible behind-the-scenes documentary of the Green Mile on YouTube. And they go in and they're talking to all the actors, and he's talking with Tom, helping him with his scenes because he was a relatively new actor. So, again, that could be something that could be on repeat because it's just as incredible as the film. But just a little heads up.
Yeah, thank you.
And in terms of your stay here in Brisbane, how often do you travel interstate with your work? And, you talked about when you were teaching some of the messaging, but I guess nationally, are you talking at conferences? Are you doing things like that?
Yeah, so I get asked to keynote at some conferences, but other work, mostly the board work, takes me interstate. So I do get around there on some advisory boards that are based out of home state, so I get to travel to there as well. So not a frequent flyer, but yeah, I'd certainly cover some miles.
And for people out there that may want to sort of follow what you're doing, maybe LinkedIn, is there a place people can follow, check out what you're doing?
Yeah. So I think in this day and age, there's not many business type people that don't have a profile on LinkedIn. I think it's important. It is social media at the end of the day. So I do occasionally get checked on that by people, rightly or wrongly, mostly wrongly. But yeah, I'm on there, so they can find Glenn Johnston. Yeah, for sure.
And I sort of want to finish with a little bit of a advice, just in general, for mob looking for their identity.
Yeah. Maybe
feeling stuck, feeling disempowered. What's a piece of advice that you'd give to someone out there that's going to watch this?
Yeah, it's what I've found is that whilst some of our journeys are similar, they're not the same. The individual has to take account over their own journey. So try and discover who they are, what they are, but more importantly, find purpose. Find the why. What's their reason for being on Earth? And when you get that, that sort of shapes the journey of the future life. If you can satisfy that purpose, then I think that you're on a long way going towards success.
And then providing value.
If you get into that opportunity, you've got to create the value and deliver the value, because that's what other people look towards leadership for.
Well, I really appreciate your time. I've actually feel quite empowered listening to you talk. Next time you're in Brisbane, if it's 6 months, 8 months, let's do a follow-up.
Yeah,
let's talk about things. Let's get some toast and some vegan options here, and let's have a good yarn. And I'd love to sort of when I'm down south as well, come and maybe sit in, if you can sneak me into a lecture or something, if that could be accommodation. Would love to just be amongst what you're doing. And
you're more than welcome, mate. And I didn't say earlier, but some of the teachings we do is we discard the Western world of teaching, which is often sitting at tables, desks and chairs. We do it in a yarning circle, and then we turn the yarning circle into a learning circle. We actually don't change the shape. It's just the mindset. It's like, okay, now we stop yarning, we're now learning. And it's incredibly powerful. And the feedback we get from the participants is it's mind-blowing. They're saying, why aren't we doing this everywhere as a way of learning? And this is part of our, the two worlds, bringing our world of learning into the modern world. And it's really powerful. So I'd love for you to sit through one of those.
No, absolutely. Brother, thank you again.
Pleasure.
And we'll chat soon.
Good on you. Thanks, mate.